Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 1994 comedy drama film Ed Wood. Now, Ed Wood is one of those films that I've seen a few times. I do like the film, but I wouldn't say that I love it. It's not my favorite Tim Burton movie like it is for other people. It's not a movie I really come back to that often, but it is a film that I do appreciate, and I would say for the most part, I don't mind. Now, before I get around to sharing more of my thoughts on the film, though, I would like to give a special shout out to Bronson for requesting this review. And if there is another film, a TV show, or topic that you would like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to either my PayPal, my Patreon, or my Cash App. The link to all three is in the video description down below, and I will try to get to your request as soon as I possibly can. Now, Ed Wood is directed by Tim Burton. And Tim Burton actually wasn't the original director that was chosen for this project. It was Michael Lemmon. But Michael Lemmon eventually, I think he ran into some issues because I think he was the chosen director for Mary Riley. And then by the time he was done with that, he couldn't really do this movie anymore. So then he decided to do Airheads instead. And that opened the door for Tim Burton. And I think Lemon probably would have done a fine job, but Burton was the perfect choice because Burton is a guy who is very into the surreal and the macabre and the bizarre and already has this kind of B movie camp sensibility as a director. So Ed Wood being a film that in many ways is a tribute to the B movies of yesteryear really was a project that was well suited for him. And he was also the person that fought for the black and white cinematography. Because originally, this film was with Columbia Pictures, and Columbia wanted to shoot it in color, and Tim wanted it to remain in black and white. And he actually took the film and shopped it to other studios once Columbia dropped it because they didn't want to make it in black and white. And he wound up getting a deal with Touchstone, and the rest is history. Burton's direction in this is great. I would probably say one of the best aspects of this film, other than some of the performances or the cinematography, is the direction by Tim Burton. This was his first serious foray into something that wasn't just pure fantasy, a film that was part drama and part comedy. And he really found a way to seamlessly transition into this type of filmmaking. It's a film that at points can make you laugh and make you chuckle at the absurdity and at the craziness of it all. But it's also a movie that has some very touching and heartfelt moments in it and has some serious drama like drug addiction and relationships falling apart and a man who's struggling with his own identity in numerous different ways or other people who are a part of his group struggling with some of the same things. Like, this is a film that I definitely feel showcases Burton at his best because it shows how he can take that creativity that he's known for when it comes to his camera work and apply it to pretty much any genre. So he's not just limited to fantasy or horror. Well, he can also direct something like Ed Wood, which has some serious dramatic elements in it. And I really love the opening credits. It's very quirky, it's very tongue in cheek, but it really is such a fun opening credit sequence to watch with the stop motion that is clearly intended to be a tribute to Ray Harryhausen. And you can just sense that there's a lot of love behind the opening credits, as well as just the entire movie. You can really tell that Tim was very much into telling the story of Ed Wood. I think a different director might not be as enthusiastic, but I think Tim actually saw a lot of himself in Ed because of Ed's connection with Bella near the end of his life, because that paralleled Tim's connection with Vincent Price. So I think there's a lot of Tim in Ed, and so because of that, he really was up to the task and then some. Some really nice usage of camera work and camera techniques, and the camera moves well throughout the film. Has some nice framing that isn't too stoic or too rigid or too stiff. It's uh, definitely what I would consider to be flexible, but not too flexible. It's not all over the place or anything. It's still pretty consistent and pretty efficient and effective. And this is a wacky movie in a lot of ways. And Burton's direction really does match that wacky energy. And when it needs to be serious, though, it also manages to match the same serious tone. So it's not just something that's always camp and always wacky and always over the top. It has its moments when it is um, the opposite, when it's more serious, when it's more, I wouldn't say subdued is the right word, but it's more subtle and it's not as in your face or as crazy or out there. Overall, yeah, I think it's a really well directed film, and I think it is absolutely one of Burton's best efforts as a director. It may not be one of my favorite films that he's done. I mean, there are other movies that he's done that I would watch over this, like Beetlejuice and Batman Returns and Sleepy Hollow. But this is still a good one. This is still a fine entry in his filmography. The screenplay is by Scott Alexander and Larry Karaszewski, and the screenplay takes some liberties in terms of the real life of Ed Wood and his colleagues or his uh, girlfriends, specifically his ex-wife, or actually I don't know if they were married, but specifically, Ed's first girlfriend, Dolores Fuller, before his relationship with Kathy. There's a lot of stuff that's pretty much invented for this movie that didn't actually happen. And there's a few other things that are fabricated in terms of the Ed Wood story. But there's a good chunk of it that is still based on reality. And this script, in a lot of ways, is kind of a hard sell, but it somehow manages to work in the end. It deals with this ambitious filmmaker named Ed Wood who has this dream of making movies. He wants to be like Orson Welles. He wants to be a guy who can produce and write and direct and star in his own movies. And he's got big dreams, but he doesn't have a big bank account in order to make any of this happen. And he also doesn't have any films under his belt. Like, he wants to make movies, but he's never made anything. But he winds up getting an opportunity to make his first film, which turns out to be Glenn or Glenda, because of the fact that he talks to the guy who's going to make the movie. And then it's a film that's intended to be a shock film, a film made for super cheap and just made to shock audiences. Because initially it was going to be about uh, the real life figure, Christine Jorgensen, who was the first man to have a sex change operation. And so that it was going to be this sensationalist movie about that. But the press announced it before the guy could actually get the rights to the story. And so now the guy who runs the company, he's got a deal set up to make this movie, but it can't be about Christine Jorgensen. So Ed Wood winds up writing a script called Glen or Glenda, sells this guy on it, and Ed makes the movie, even stars in it, and it's a complete bomb. It's a flop. The guy who financed the movie never wants to work with Ed again. But Ed having made a movie, it's a major deal to him, and it makes him definitely think that he is destined to be some kind of big filmmaker, the next Orson Welles, even though he's making crap. But to him, oh, this is just the beginning. And he is working with his friends and his colleagues and has them in the movie and has them work on the film. Uh, his girlfriend Dolores is a major part of the movie, helping him with the writing and being one of the stars in it. And she actually is initially accepting of the fact that he's a transvestite. Like, he comes out and tells her, hey, I like wearing women's clothes, and she's like, oh, that's why my sweaters were all stretched out. And the relationship though eventually falls apart though, because he's trying to get her apart in his next movie, Bride of the Atom, but in order to ensure financing for it, he actually cast this other actress in it, which upsets his girlfriend. She breaks up with him. But it turned out to be honestly for the better, because it didn't really seem like they were necessarily the best fit for one another. Because Ed eventually finds this other woman who ultimately becomes his wife, and Kathy. And that happens later on, because Dolores doesn't break up with him fully until after the movie Bride of the Atom is eventually finished, but not until like there's a bunch of delay. I mean, there's a ton of delays with the production. And that's one of the best things about this script, is showing all the different delays and all the different issues and problems that arise when trying to make a movie, especially a movie on the cheap, and how you got to think on the fly. And oh, you thought that you insured your financing for the movie because you got this woman as a star, but she lied to you and she doesn't have $60,000. She only has $300. And so now you can't shoot the rest of your movie. And so now you got to secure financing again. And now you got to go talk to this guy who runs a meat place and then agree to his demands, which include having his son star in the movie and have the movie end with an explosion, even if it doesn't make any sense. And he eventually finishes the movie, but there was just so much trouble involved with the production though. I mean, they had to steal the octopus for the finale. They stole it from the prop room and had to utilize it without a motor because they forgot to take the motor. So Bella Lugosi has to like mess around with the limbs of the octopus in order to get it to work on camera. And just the whole process of finding the different cast members is also fun. That's definitely something that is for the most part well done in this script. How Ed finds Bella, how he and Bella become friends, how he gets Bella involved in these movies, how he finds other stars like Tor Johnson, who's a wrestler, and Vampira, and eventually what leads to the creation of Plan 9 from Outer Space, which initially was called Grave Robbers from Outer Space, but because of the deal to secure financing, which is with this Baptist church, had to change the title and also had to make it so you can't mention grave robbing and other things that could be considered blasphemous. And that's also the reason why Ed and his friends wound up getting baptized in a rather hilarious scene. And I like the fact that his friends, they're a nice collection of different personalities. Bunny, who is this gay man who has dreams of being a woman, going and having a sex change operation, but never really goes through with it. Uh, some of the, Tor and Vampira, and a nice little cast of outcasts, and Bella, who has been thrown away by Hollywood because he's a junkie and he's a has-been. And the way that it handles Bella, I thought for the most part was good, except he never really was a foul-mouthed guy, though. That's something that the script created. It was never really who Bella was, but I was okay with it. Uh, they didn't, the writers did not shy away from showing Bella as a pathetic junkie. They showed him at his lowest point, showed him in rehab, screaming his head off, being tied to a bed. Showed him with holes in his arms, from all of the syringes, and the needles and everything, because he was addicted to morphine. Uh, but the Bela Lugosi scenes, they're really what elevates this movie, to be honest. Because a lot of the other stuff, in terms of the writing, it's fine. The romance between Ed and Kathy is sweet and charming for what it is. And they definitely do seem like they're meant for one another. And, the shenanigans involving the making of these bad movies is entertaining to a certain degree, but a lot of the strengths of this film have to do with Bela Lugosi, this once well-renowned, beloved movie star who is on his last legs, and his relationship with Ed Wood. And the movie Plan 9 from Outer Space, it gets made. Ed has his big Hollywood premiere, but it's a joke, because it's one of the worst movies of all time, according to many people. But for Ed, it was a massive win. It was like one of the biggest wins of his entire life, because he got to make this movie, and it got a premiere in Hollywood. And yeah, it might be a piece of junk, but hey, he actually made it. He got it done. He was able to take the advice of his idol and Orson Welles, who he met uh, throughout this whole journey, and he fought for his vision. Which, that quote, by the way, is great. Visions are worth fighting for. Why spend your life making someone else's dreams? That is such a great quote. And I did appreciate that the script, it was very self-aware of how ridiculous Ed was. How he thought he was making masterpieces, but he was making trash. But he's just so oblivious, but in a way that's honestly kind of endearing, and in its own way kind of inspiring. The fact that this no-name guy found a way to make his movies. There's something to be said about that. And that ties into one of the last lines that Ed has from the script. This is the one. This is the one I'll be remembered for. Which he was right. It definitely was the one that he was remembered for. Maybe not necessarily for the reasons that he would like, but it was memorable. So, yeah, a lot of the enjoyment from this really comes from the movie making stuff, the behind the scenes stuff, and just the unlikely pairing of Ed Wood and Bela Lugosi. So the script, it's got a good heart. It's definitely, in my opinion, a good example of the various different issues that can arise while making movies and how difficult it can be to make a movie. But it's not particularly that funny. It's listed as a comedy, but like there's maybe one or two scenes that made me laugh. There's not really a lot of moments that made me laugh out loud or even made me chuckle, maybe smirk a few times, but that's really about it. So as a comedy, it's lacking in that area to me personally. It's more effective as a drama than it is as a comedy. And when it comes to the story, it's a bit drawn out because there's only so much you can really get out of, oh, hey, this fledgling filmmaker really wants to make a movie. And you're like, okay, all right, cool. And he makes his movies and they're bad and they're B movies and they're trashy. Uh, but hey, he got it done. But I mean, there's just only so much that you can really get out of that when it comes to like anything involving social commentary or themes or anything deeper out of it. And I definitely do feel that with the character of Ed Wood, the way that he's written in this, he comes across more like a movie character than the actual person, like a real flesh and blood person, because he really was a much more flawed guy, similar to Bella. Like he was an alcoholic, and that was not even really mentioned at all in this. There's a deleted scene that kind of briefly mentions it because he was like sleeping next to an empty bottle of booze, but they didn't really touch upon that at all in the final film. I think maybe it was because they wanted to paint a lighter picture of him. Maybe they felt like, oh, that would be too tonally inconsistent. And I don't agree with that because Bella is shown doing drugs. So it's not like him being an alcoholic is really something that's too far out of left field. And it would have made his character feel more real to me because even the way that he's talking about wearing Angora sweaters and, oh, I fought in World War II and I was wearing a brassiere and panties. Like there's stuff that, okay, that might be true, but like the way that it's written, it just comes across as more of a uh, larger than life kind of thing, less more like a gritty, grounded kind of character. And that's kind of how a lot of the other characters come across. And I think that might be the whole point because it's trying to be more lighthearted and everything. But I think you could have had a better balance of the lighthearted stuff and the more serious stuff. Because the only stuff you really got with that is really with Bella, and that's about it. And I think you could have had more with Ed to make him really more of a dynamic character. Because as it is, he's just kind of one note a little bit, other than him being overly ambitious and being into wearing women's clothes. That's really honestly all you have when it comes to Ed's character. So the characters could have used some work when it comes to the writing. Uh, and like I said, the whole conflict, it's just, oh, I want to make my movies. That's really not that much of a conflict for a nearly 2 hour long movie. Like, kind of need a little bit more than that, but that's just me personally. Uh, but the script is still fine. It's good. I don't think it's great, but I do think it's still at the end of the day a good screenplay. The cast, though, phenomenal. This is an amazing cast. I mean, Johnny Depp as Ed Wood, perfect casting. And you could definitely tell that Johnny was really enjoying the opportunity to play this director with these massive lofty ideals, and it was something fresh and different for him, and it really helped him take his mind off of a lot of things that he was going through at the time. And he even admitted it helped rejuvenate him when it comes to his performance and his involvement with this movie. I will admit, though, some of the acting is a bit cheesy, but I guess it kind of works because it's a movie about bad movies. But there are some moments where his acting is bad, but I think that's kind of the intent. But what's wild, though, is that there are other actors in this where the acting isn't as cheesy, isn't as theatrical. So I don't know exactly what is going on sometimes because Martin Landau was fantastic. He was incredible as Bela Lugosi, and he deserved the Oscar that he got for this and then some. But you got Johnny Depp just being very over the top, but then you got Martin Landau playing the role pretty straight as Bella. Sarah Jessica Parker as Dolores Fuller, she was fine, but I think because of the fact that the character was kind of thin, she didn't have a lot to work with, but she was all right. Same thing goes for Patricia Arquette as Kathy. Jeffrey Jones, he played the amazing Criswell. It was good casting. The guy's a scumbag, so it's kind of hard for me to really get a lot of enjoyment out of his portrayal of this character, but he did a good job playing this lame psychic. Uh, G.D. Spradlin as Reverend Lemon, the Baptist minister who funds Plan 9 for Outer Space. It was fun to see him again. I think he's one of the more underrated character actors, if you ask me. Vincent D'Onofrio as Orson Welles. He looked the part, but Tim didn't like his voiceover, so he dubbed him with Maurice LaMarche doing a Wells impression, and he just sounds like he's the Brain from Pinky and the Brain, which that's what his voiceover of that character was. It was an impression of Orson Welles, and that's literally what it sounds like. I was like, the Brain, I guess, took over Vincent D'Onofrio. Like, it really took me out of it because he just sounded like he was doing the Brain again. Lisa Marie as Vampira, that was a really good bit of casting. She definitely looked the part. Bill Murray, he stole every scene that he was in as Bunny, this drag queen friend, this gay man who helps uh, Ed with making his movies. And Mike Starr was fun as George Weiss, the short-tempered producer of Glenn or Glenda. George Animal Steel as Tor Johnson in a role that he was born to play. So it's a good cast for sure. Definitely a pretty stellar cast. The cinematography by Stefan Kazaspi is glamorous at points, but not too much. Like, it has some bits of Hollywood glamour, but it also has a lot of uh, B movie sensibilities to it. It looks like a B movie. It has that sort of feel and vibe to it, but there are some moments where you get some of that Hollywood. And I think that really worked well. And I think he matched Burton's vision for the film perfectly. The editing by Chris Levinson, I think, is fine. This isn't a film that has a lot of clever edits in it, though. So I think it's trying to be less flashy, but the editing works for the movie that it's ultimately trying to be. The music by Howard Shore, it fits the film very well. It's a good usage of orchestral music and electronic stuff, and it provides the film with a lot of its more heartfelt notes but it also, in its own way, is a tribute to these old B movies. It was really refreshing to hear a different composer other than Danny Elfman work with Tim Burton, and it shows that, hey, other composers can match Tim Burton's style just as well. And it was just fun to see Howard Shore do a score like this too. It's a little bit out of his comfort zone. Definitely something that's a little bit different than what he normally does. So it was fun to see him do a score for a movie that is, in essence, a tribute to B movies. And the pacing of it, it's a bit slow at points. It's a bit plodding. Because, like I said, the conflict is just Ed Wood wants to make movies. Is he going to be able to make his movies? That's really what the main conflict is, other than stuff that's going on with Bella and his drug use and how long Bella has left. But other than that, like, that's all your main conflict is. I guess you could say romance, but even that is just not really that engaging of a conflict because it doesn't seem like it's that long at all until Ed finds his wife. But yeah, Ed Wood, it's, in my opinion, it's a it's a good movie. I just don't think it's a great film. I don't agree that it's outrageously entertaining. Like I don't agree with that. But it's an entertaining enough movie. And I think if you are somebody who's a big fan of this era of cinema, I think you'll probably get way more out of it than I do. Because this is not really one of my favorite eras of cinema. So I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, I this is so fun and interesting, and it's so great to see a tribute to the films that I grew up with and the style of movies that I remember. Like, I'm not a fan of Plan 9 for Outer Space. I'm not a fan of any of Ed Wood's movies. I think they suck. But uh for people who are into his films and into his unique brand of cinema, then this is definitely something that I think you're really going to enjoy and find endearing. But otherwise, mileage may vary. I definitely think this is a movie that's an acquired taste at the end of the day. But yeah, that's my thoughts on Ed Wood. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. See ya.